Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising. One of the wonderful things about Ubiquity University is the extraordinary number of partnerships that we have. We're a university that believes in collaboration. We're a university that believes in spiritual and personal development, that if you go deep inside your own psyche and soul, you can go as far as you want in the external world with an equilibrium of heart. So today we want to highlight two of our partnerships that have been developing over time. We're very excited as we partner with different non-academic content providers. And I want to just note that in the realm of education and learning, it used to be, not so long ago, that if you wanted to learn anything, you had to go to school. You had to go to university. And if you didn't learn it at university, well, you didn't have very much of an opportunity to learn much at all. That is no longer our world. They say that human knowledge is doubling every 15 minutes. Just take that in for a second. That human knowledge is doubling every 15 minutes or so. Some say 12 minutes, some say 17 minutes. How is it possible for a single institution to keep up just with knowledge expansion? And in our internet world, what's taking place is that the best content is now coming from outside of academic institutions. And that's why Ubiquity University has really broken ground. We're the first university anywhere in the world that we know about that is partnering with organizations to bring the best content that's available in the world right now on the cutting edge, and then working out a relationship so that our students or any student can take the courses of our partner and then bring that in for credit toward a master's or PhD degree. It's very, very exciting because that enables a small little university like Ubiquity to keep up with unfolding exponential growth in knowledge and wisdom and capacity in the world. That's what we're doing with our ET Studies program. We have a partnership with the New Paradigm Institute, which is literally on the cutting edge of UAP disclosure. And then you can take the certificates, bring that certificate into Ubiquity, and get the first ever master's and PhD degrees in extraterrestrial studies. And we have several dozen other such partnerships. Today, we want to just first begin with a partnership with the Dance of Oneness organization, headed by Banafsheh Sayad, who's a sacred dancer and choreographer and author from Iran, currently living in the Los Angeles area. She's the founder of the Dance of Oneness. And she herself has a very dynamic partnership with the Shift Network, with which Ubiquity also has a partnership. So she's going to tell us a little bit about her new course. There's a free course coming up later on today, so we thought we would take a few minutes at the beginning of the program to profile and promote Dance of Oneness, and encourage all of you to take that free course later this afternoon. So Banafsheh, welcome to Humanity Rising.
Thank you so much, Jim. Thank you. Hello to everyone. The event that Jim is talking about is just a free event that I will be doing later today before the US presidential debate around 4 p.m. Pacific for about an hour. where I will be discussing the hidden link between Mary Magdalene and the Sufis. While there are a lot of references to Jesus in the Sufi path, I've never come across any references to Mary Magdalene. Yet, as she's referred to as the teacher of the Gnostics and a leading figure for the Gnostics, I see her glorious teachings echoed in the Sufi path, as it is also a Gnostic path. People commonly refer to the Sufis as the holders of esoteric Islam or the heart of Islam. But I see the teachings as a much older teaching, connecting us with a thread to the divine feminine tradition, all the way back to the divine feminine tradition. And to me, Sufi, the word Sufi itself evokes Sophia, the goddess of wisdom, revered among the Gnostics, especially the Gnostic Christians. Mary Magdalene was considered to carry the frequency of Sophia. Like Christianity, especially Gnostic Christianity, Sufis like Rumi and Sohravardi and many, many others were very influenced by the Mithraic, Zoroastrian, and the Manichaean traditions that are themselves very related. The Manichaean tradition, which was founded by the Iranian mystic Mani, who lived in the 2nd century AD, is a synthesis of the teachings of Zarathustra, Buddha, and Jesus, which spread to many parts of the world and influenced many people, including the Cathars in southern France, who are said to have preserved the teachings of Mary Magdalene after she sought refuge in southern France after escaping from Palestine. Mani was a Gnostic who preached a dualistic theology in which there is, on the one hand, a transcendent, supreme divinity, and the other hand, the master of the world, the demiurge, as Plato coined the word. The demiurge we can see in the punishing gods like Yahweh and Allah. The spark of the supreme divinity is within each human being that we are meant to uncover, activate, and expand into a body of light, becoming fully human. So both for Mary Magdalene and the Sufis, who emphasize the importance of embodied wisdom and living love in the world, the activation and expansion of the spark happens through love and wisdom, through gnosis. So my focus in this free event is really to talk about the course I will be doing, the 12-week course that's about activating a body of light. And when I talk about activating a body of light, I'm not saying we will deny the dark and just become fully light. It's really about the integration of the light and the dark. As they are partners, they're dance partners, as we see in the symbol of the Tao, the yin yang. The light shines ever so brighter in the dark. So really by activating a body of light, we're striving to come into balance, which happens through love, as love is both light and dark and unites the two. So in this hour that I will be doing later today, which will have a replay on Saturday, the 14th, around 11 a.m., and I'll put the details later in the chat. In this hour, I will be also doing a movement practice called Rose of Light. It's a short practice to bring us in touch with our heart opening like a rose emitting light. The rose is a central symbol for Mary Magdalene and the Sufis as well, representing the opening of the heart to the revelation and to the experience of divine love. So you can find out more about this free event and the course by going to my website if you're not on the Zoom with us today. It's danceofoneness.org, and I'll put the details in the chat for those of you who are on the Zoom. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Banafshe. It's extraordinary the depth to which you've gone into the Mary Magdalene influence in the Sufis. And I wondered whether you could just touch on this this notion of the beloved, because that's at the heart of Sufism. And it also is the way Jesus and Mary Magdalene can most accurately, in a single word, be described in terms of their relationship. They were deeply beloved with one another. And how would you just comment on the beloved in Sufism and the deep intimacy between Jesus and Mary Magdalene?
Yes, yes. Thank you for that. So the Sufis refer to the divine as the beloved, and this notion, this reference to the divine as the beloved, was actually first uttered by Rabia. Rabia in the 8th century. She's really one of the only women Sufis that we know of who called the divine her beloved. And despite all the boys around her, she fearlessly did this, as this was not, the common reference to the divine at the time, definitely. So the Sufis from then on influenced by Rabia, referred to the divine as the beloved, and meaning all of life, meaning existence as the beloved, coming into this love relationship. And as you said, this is also the relationship that we know of now with certainty, with the research that many have done, and the meditations and visioning, as Mary Magdalene has been communicating to so many of us through our visions and dreams and meditations, that she was truly the beloved companion and wife of Jesus, and that together they were co-teachers together. And this relationship of lover beloved that she has with him, and also that she really invites us into coming into this relationship with all of existence as a love relationship, is very similar. It's very similar to the Sufis. And there are many other parallels that I will make in this free event. Some of them I will mention in the free event. Most of them we will attend to in the course, which I'm using the chakra system to really go into activating a body of light, to really go into each of the chakras and sense into what does it mean to carry light? What does it mean to carry light in our roots, in our sacral area, in our solar plexus, and so on? Light, in our minds. What does that mean? And I'm also working with Magdalene's tree of light, the great tree within, actually, not tree of light, the great tree within, where at each bough, at each level, there's something that you shed that has to do with your false identity, in order to activate more and more of that original spark, and remember our divine origin. So I'm kind of juxtaposing this tree of light with the great tree within that she maps out in the Gospel of the Beloved Companion, with the chakras. Brilliant. And Chinese, looking at experiencing the meridians, and all through dance and meditation and chanting, various other modalities.
Only a Persian could bring together this amalgamation. It's worth noting, everyone, that Persia, it's 600, 700, 800 BC, was the first civilization to unite the world, from China to North Africa, and Europe, and the Mediterranean. And I can feel, Banafsheh, that you still have this ethos of Cyrus the Great in bringing all these different strands of spirituality together. So I salute you on a Tuesday morning, and wish you all the best for your course and what you're going to be doing with the SHIP network. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for bringing up Cyrus and the great Persian ethos, especially given where we are now in Iran, where there's no freedom of speech, there's no freedom to be, really. So thank you for reminding everyone of what really truly lives there, and that we hope to uncover more and more of, so that we can remember that heritage, that to help us overcome the current regime and actually overthrow the current regime.
Yeah, Banafshe will be
I'm very
back on Friday, everyone, because we're coming close to the second anniversary of the killing of Masa Amini, the young woman who was killed because she had not the hijab on in the correct way. So that'll be on Friday on Humanity Rising, again with Banafshe. So thank you. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you, everyone.
It's very fitting, everyone, that we just had this essentially a discourse on the beloved and on the tree of light and the chakras, Mary Magdalene and the Sufis from Banafshe Sayad, because the partnership that we want to delve into now is around a partnership between Ubiquity University and Sacred Balance, which is offering a 3-year program in ordination for those wanting to develop leadership in spiritual communities, either as a reverend or a priest or whatever includes ordination, etc. And that's important for us to honor in our world today, because the spiritual depth that we all require as we traverse our increasingly chaotic and ferociously violent world is not to be underestimated. It is acutely important. So at Ubiquity, we have a PhD program, which is essentially focused around academic research, but we also have a Doctor of Ministry program that really is around cultivating the pastoral virtues, shall we say, and is on a slightly different track. So I want to introduce now Mary Francis Drake, who's a seasoned educator for many, many decades in women's studies, who is an ordained minister and reverend, who's the director of the Doctor of Ministry program at Ubiquity University, but also, along with Kaylin Rain and others, has been developing a partnership program with an organization called Sacred Balance. And Mary Francis is going to make a presentation about what that entails, and then I'll circle back for a dialogue for the balance of the time. And then Mary Francis will join everyone in the after chat. So Mary Francis, welcome to Humanity Rising.
Thank you, Jim. So it's a pleasure to be here. I wanted to start, if I may, by just sending some heart feeling towards my soul sister Banafshe, as she described the Gnostic Sufism and the interfaith kind of approach that we also have in Sacred Balance, and how knowing that one of the reasons that Ubiquity has this Doctor of Ministry program is to create the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. And there are many paths that we can walk along to do that. So along with being the founder and co-director of Sacred Balance, I just finished the Doctor of Ministry program this spring. And my dissertation was on conscious evolution on the Christian mystical initiatory path, a spiritual technology for the golden age. And I felt when I was listening to Banafshe that she is doing that same thing on the Sufi and the dance path, and that it's very heartwarming to see all the people out there trying to create a more beautiful world in the way that they have been trained, in the way that they are moved in spirit and in their lives. So that was a beautiful way to begin today. And I'd like to share a short poem with you that a friend of mine, his name is Fred Lamont, he's a modern mystic. I'd like to share it with you just in light of what Banafshe was saying, and also as an introduction to Sacred Balance, the spiritual school that I run for modern mystics, for Christian mystics, and those who would like to be ministers in that tradition. So these are Fred's words about mysticism and love. Others often define themselves by their beliefs. I define myself by my loves. I'm too stupid to believe. I know only a vast and intimate bewilderment. I love Mary Magdalene. She is my breath and the healing Shakti that flows through it. I love Christ Jesus. He is the very light that glows from each electron in my flesh, the infinitesimal sun that shines from the center of every atom. Yet he illuminates the galaxies. I love my teacher, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. He is the pure wonder of my own awareness, when this mind is still, listening, free from thoughts. I love my first guru, Maharishi. He is the pulse of my heart and the surrendered silence between heartbeats. I love Sai Krishna. He is the bliss that pervades the universe, holding the entire creation between breathing out and breathing in. Yes, others have beliefs, but I can only adore. At any given moment, the chaos of love might astonish me with one of these divinely human faces. Jesus, Mary, Guru, Krishna. Yet I do not cling to this form or that one, for they are facets of one jewel, the diamond pleroma, resting in its secret setting at the center of my soul, in the crystal beauty of silence. If we can take a moment of silence to let that land. And then I can begin to share with you about I have dual roles with Ubiquity. I'll start first with Sacred Balance as a partnership. So as I was finishing up my Doctor of Ministry degree, I was asked to help revitalize the Doctor of Ministry program, and they were looking for partners. And my spiritual school and community, Sacred Balance, is a modern mystical spiritual school, as Jim said, non-academic in the mainstream traditional definition of that. I happen to work in mainstream academia, which is one of the other reasons why I came to Ubiquity and why I'm excited about partnering with Ubiquity, is because I do believe that as all of these traditions and all of these ways of knowing are coming to the surface in our world, that having an avenue for speaking the truth about these truths, about these true paths to, as Banafshe described, taking on the body of light and transforming into loving beings, divinely human beings, that this tradition that I was raised up in, Christian mysticism, is one of those paths. And it's one of the paths that has, in particular, been somewhat maligned in the world of conservative Christianity. And we all know about that. But modern mysticism or Christian mysticism is the inner path, as Sufism is the inner path of Islam. And so I became a priest in that tradition in 2005 and a bishop in 2020. And what that means is, as a priest, I was an independent sacramentalist, which means I offer the Christian sacraments. And then as a bishop, I am a teacher of priests and other bishops. And so this spiritual school, Sacred Balance, started as a community and turned into a school to train deacons, priests, and bishops on this particular path. So before I go into the logistics of what that looks like in terms of a partnership with Ubiquity, I'd like to read two quotes to you. One of them is by Socrates. And he says, the secret of change is to focus all of our energy, not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And I'm a big fan of Charles Eisenstein, who talks about creating the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. And I feel that this partnership with Ubiquity and the work that we do at Sacred Balance is very aligned with that philosophy of saying, let's not fight, but let's build something that we know is truer and more loving and more open and more real than the illusory world that we see out there, that world of duality and often fighting. And in that vein, a definition of the mystic which I would imagine many people would align with or resonate with. And this is the definition that I have. In the realm of archetypes, there exists a figure of profound wisdom and ethereal beauty, the mystic, a beacon of serenity amidst the chaos of the world. The mystic embodies an intimate connection to the divine, effortlessly navigating the boundaries between the seen and unseen. In the presence of the mystic, the boundaries of time and space dissolve, and the veil between the ordinary and the extraordinary lifts. We are invited to step beyond the confines of our limited perception and glimpse the boundless possibilities that lie beyond. The mystic's journey is not merely their own. It is a reflection of our shared human potential, an invitation to awaken the mystic within ourselves. And so this is the expression of that in Christian mysticism, is the Christian initiatory path, which looks like many other initiatory paths in that there are teachings, there are practices, there are sacraments, rituals, initiations that help people go from one step of consciousness to another, go from one sense of oneself as a human physical being to ultimately a divine being in human form. And along that way of incremental stepping on that path comes more and more light, comes more and more love, comes more and more awareness, more and more peace, and a higher and higher vibration of consciousness, which is the movement of spirit in the evolution of humankind toward this more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. So that's what Sacred Balance does. We welcome people who have an affinity or a love for Jesus and Mary Magdalene and many other saints and helpers of our souls. And wherever they start with us, we begin a process of teaching, devotion, ritual, sacrament, eventually initiations and ordinations if people are called to that in that direction as a minister of some sort. Starting with a deacon who cares for the chapel and the sanctuary of people's hearts, and moving to a priest who is a sacramentalist, and a bishop who is ordains priests and other bishops. So that's kind of the organization of Sacred Balance. And this we have a group of about 18 ministers now, some of them priests and some of them bishops, who are very interested in going on to get advanced degrees. And so as I was getting my degree with Ubiquity, I realized that that would be a fortuitous partnership to have for the folks that I have raised up in my tradition. And so as we're looking at the January cohort that will be starting the Doctor of Ministry program, some of them direct entry, some of them through partners, I'm excited to find people who are wanting to continue and get those advanced degrees. And with the Doctor of Ministry, the degree is a terminal professional degree, like a Juris Doctorate or an MD. And the dissertation is more of an impact dissertation, or I like to think of it as a magnum opus for people who have spent their lives supporting the tradition that they're in. And in this case, for Sacred Balance, the Christian mystical tradition. And it's generally speaking, a functional dissertation, which means that it is something that we want to put out into the world that's going to have an impact in our community, or I guess I would say in the mind of the world, which is one of the things that I think is important about Ubiquity, is to start interrupting the patterns in the world that are no longer useful to us, including mainstream academia, which is very stifling. And I know that from personal experience and from working in that industry. I've also worked in hospice and home care, and I see how healthcare has those kinds of things that need to be interrupted. And I know Ubiquity has some programs in integrative health, which is wonderful. So the many ways that we can infiltrate, let's say, the patterns that have led us to the world that we have now, and create and build the more beautiful world out of a new patterning. I think that's a really fabulous opportunity, and I'm really happy to be offering that to my folks who are ministers in Sacred Balance. I would imagine that this relationship is reciprocal. Here I am speaking on Humanity Rising. That's one way of telling people about what I do. And also, I've spoken before about the pilgrimage that I'm going to be leading. I'm actually leaving for Ireland on Sunday to lead a women's pilgrimage. And that is a pilgrimage that Ubiquity has accepted for credit. So if any of the people that go to this pilgrimage want to transfer credit from that experience, they can do that, which is a wonderful way to have a reciprocal relationship between the partners and Ubiquity. I do happen to be the director of the Doctor of Ministry program. So for me, I get to see students coming up with their ideas about their dissertations and the impact they want to have on the world in their particular tradition. That's a beautiful thing to be witness to and to support. And when I think about all of these things, all I can feel is the feeling of the heart or the lotus opening to the potential for how releasing these truths from the heart of these traditions is the thing that will change the mind of the world and open the hearts of humankind as we go forward into this more beautiful world, which is coming for us. And so we can join in that. And I'm really excited about that for the folks in Sacred Balance. And I'm also excited about that for Ubiquity and the world. So I wanted to show you a little bit from my website about, hopefully I have an opportunity to share my screen here. Yeah. Okay. I hope that you can see that clearly. So my spiritual name is Ma Devi, and on my Ma Devi website, we have Sacred Balance, which is our Christian mystical spiritual community, as you can see here. A transformative spiritual community and training institute offering esoteric teachings, daily contemplation and communion, retreats, spiritual direction, and minister training. And it's called the Independent Sacramental Movement because Sacred Balance is not a church or an order or a denomination. It is a gathering of independent sacramentalists who support one another's growth, and then those who want to be on the training trajectory can join in that way, or they can just be part of our community. And that has to do with spiritual practices of mysticism, of Christian mysticism, devotion, blessings, sacraments, initiations. So then we have these community offerings. We have teachings, gatherings, and retreats. We have a Facebook group that's closed that we offer sacraments of communion, rosary, Sunday services. We often do our initiations and ordinations with a Zoom component because we have people from all over the country who are participants or friends of Sacred Balance. And there's the daily communion prayers. And we often do book studies. A few times a year, we do book studies to support the continued learning and growth and exposure to different kinds of mysticism and practices. So the minister training is a ministry for independent ministers. And unlike when I was coming up as a minister, I was vowed to a particular bishop for a particular amount of time. But I've chosen to follow the independent sacramental movement, which means that as ministers are ordained, they are free to practice their ministry, such as they find it in themselves and their relationship with the divine. And so we here ordain independent ministers rather than denominational ministers. And so sometimes the title Christian mysticism, I think many people who gather here at Humanity Rising would have a feel for what that is, but in mainstream Christianity, it's not really understood very well. And to be honest, that's okay with me because I'm wanting to create another stream outside of mainstream. And so I'm glad to be confounding those ideas. So anyone who's devoted to the way of the Christ and the transformative practice, the process, can apply to be a member of the community or to be in training for ministry. And that requires a few years of practice and study. And here's my dissertation, which is available for free on my website for anyone who wants to learn more about this particular path that Sacred Balance offers. And then in order to interface with Ubiquity, we created these 3 years of the expression of the 3 years of training, which we've been doing. So first of all, of course, someone would come in to work with us as a novice or a new student, and they would learn the practices of meditation and prayer within the Christian mystical tradition. And they would do a review of their life, which we call a retrospection, and which I would say would be equivalent to Ken Wilber's cleanup stage. It's about forgiveness, it's about release, it's about clearing the way for the spirit to come into the person, and that culminates in a baptism, and the baptism as a sacrament in our tradition. And then there are retreats. So the first year, a student goes along with all of these practices and with the sacraments and the initiations as they go along. The first initiation is actually the baptism. And the second one is called illumination. And illumination, as you might understand, means to be filled with light. So as Banafshé was saying, it is the practices of stepping incrementally into more and more alignment with the light, and then drawing it through your being and becoming a radiant being of light, which is what a mystic is, how a mystic integrates the spiritual and physical worlds, keeping that space open between the worlds. So that usually takes about a year for people who are dedicated in practice. And then if they're so moved to ministry, they would begin training for the diaconate. And that is the first level of training that has to do with care of the congregation and the chapel. And it is a vow of service for life to God and humanity. And so it's really quite a big thing to say, I feel called to give my whole life into the service of humankind. But I think that many people do that. When I think of the doctor of ministry, I think about the people who have a passionate mission. And I consider a passionate mission also a ministry, as many of you probably do as well. So that's the second year of training, has to do with a vow, which is the heart's desire and promise to continue working for the upliftment of humankind and the alleviation of suffering on the planet and the glory of the divine. So that takes about a year of deepening. The ordination for the diaconate comes after the initiation of illumination. So you can see the stepwise nature of these sacraments and initiations. And the deacon in training also gets to, practice some of the sacraments like communion and baptism as well. And then the third year is priest training. And the priest training is an apprenticeship model in our tradition. So as Jim said, outside of mainstream academia, the apprenticeship model is something that has been used in many traditions, where priests will train with bishops or other more seasoned priests to understand the alchemy of the spirit and the alchemy of the ritual that we call sacraments, the energetic movement of the light as we do the sacraments, and the priests prepare to do those things. They practice doing those things. They work with an advisor and confessor, and also practice in the chapels that we have in different locations. This priest training and the ordination comes after the initiation called self-realization, which you might be familiar with, remembering yourself as one with God. And then the ordination is a vow for eternal service, not just in this lifetime, but in every lifetime. The priest vows to come back like a bodhisattva in the Christian tradition would be. The priest who says, I will continue lifetime after lifetime coming back to help raise the consciousness of humankind and alleviate suffering on the planet. And so this 3 years of training is equivalent to 36 hours of spiritual direction, 276 hours of teachings and gatherings, 144 hours of winter and summer retreats, and 624 hours of sacraments and services throughout the year, through the seasons of the calendar, the Christian calendar. And that's a total of about 1,080 hours for people who are training as for priesthood in Christian mysticism. And with Ubiquity, the requirement is to have, I think it's about 365 hours of contact or engagement in a program of study. So you can see that we offer quite a lot more than that, and we require, I would say, quite a lot more than that. And so it made sense that that would be, a full and robust training program to then transfer into Ubiquity for those who wanted to carry on to do a Doctor of Ministry or PhD. And then we have images of our ministers, including myself. Beatrice came with me to Chartres a couple of years ago, and then we have a center in Connecticut, in Pennsylvania, in New Hampshire, and in Hawaii. Also Texas and a few other places. And then we have our partnership with Ubiquity. And so any institute that wants to partner makes this kind of website interface that says, what are we doing and how does it work to transfer into Ubiquity? And so it tells a little bit about that program, and then we can go right into the Ubiquity website and see Sacred Balance there. So if a student comes in directly into Ubiquity to complete a Doctor of Ministry, that would be called a Doctor of Ministry in Engaged Wisdom, which is the degree that I earned just recently. In March, I graduated. And if our Sacred Balance folks come in, they're coming in for a graduate degree, a Doctor of Ministry in Modern Mysticism. So each partner determines what the language will be around their degree program, since the credits are heavily weighted by the degree. 23 of the 60 credits are transferred in from Sacred Balance into Ubiquity in whichever program the student wants to go into. And then they take 3 courses and do their impact dissertation. And so this mirrors what I have on my Facebook page, on my website, so that people can see what it is that we're doing in our 3-year program. And then if people are enrolled with me in Sacred Balance, or if they've completed their coursework, they can apply here and start the enrollment process with Ubiquity. And again, this is reiterates on the Ubiquity side what it is that we do. So I would imagine that there might be some people who are interested in Ubiquity who see Sacred Balance and say, I want that particular kind of training. And then after training with us, or in tandem training with us in Sacred Balance, they could do an advanced degree with Ubiquity, which I think is a wonderful opportunity. And then the outcomes of this program with Sacred Balance is to clear the history of trauma and pain. So along with being a minister, I'm also a psychologist, and I teach for a university, and I'm a poet and author. And so I've done a lot of things that help people move through that process that Ken Wilber talks about with clean up, grow up, wake up, show up. And so I think the show up part will be the part where the ministers, their ordination is certainly showing up, but then also showing up to Ubiquity to get their advanced degree if that's what they're moved to do. The people in Sacred Balance who are in training in ministry are there to master the art of service to congregants and care for the mystical chapel and the sacred space, and to pass on the lineage, which is passed on by laying on of hands, of Christian mysticism, and then mastering the art of transubstantiation in the administration of sacraments and initiations, and then being equipped to set up their own chapel and teach devotional practices of Christian mysticism and serve communions. And that is independent. It does not fall under the auspices of a denomination, although we are very clear about ethical practices in ministry, as any ministry or chaplain program would be. So that is the process with Ubiquity in that regard. And so then if I could just go on for a minute, I know we're winding down, but to talk about the Doctor of Ministry program in general. So you get the sense of how that worked with Sacred Balance. And then we have the New England Goddess Temple is in the process of joining with Ubiquity. And I'm talking to several other institutes that are related to Indigenous studies, transformative art, goddess studies, other modern mystical traditions, and each of them will create that same kind of link with Ubiquity, where their folks who have been engaged with them for at least 365 hours can make that same transfer of credits, and their institute can decide what that doctor of ministry will be called, and then their students can transfer in. And then also people on the Ubiquity side and people from Humanity Rising will get to hear about those programs and may be interested in joining those programs outside of Ubiquity or in tandem with doing a master's or doctorate program. So it's a very beautiful symbiosis and allows for a lot of expansion, I think, in these traditions that are non-academic but highly important for our times, things that are creating the more beautiful world, and building a world outside of the patterns that have had us stuck as humankind for so long, had us closed down and maybe focusing on our mentation more than our hearts, more than our connection. And I'm really excited as the Doctor of Ministry Director with Ubiquity to be finding more and more of those institutes who want to join with Ubiquity, and bringing in students who either through direct entry or through the institutes will make up the next cohort of Doctor of Ministry students as this program is revitalized and expanded in this way. And the Ubiquity website is also in the process of being updated, but it is in pretty good form at the moment in terms of the Doctor of Ministry. So happy to take any questions or to connect with people. You can reach me at mfdrake@ubiquityuniversity.org. That's my email address. You can check out Sacred Balance at madevi.org. That's my personal website with Sacred Balance, and there's ways to access me there. And I feel like this program is really developing and unfolding and really revitalizing. Revitalizing means getting some life into it, more life into it. And that's a beautiful endeavor, and I'm glad to be a part of it on both counts. So thank you for having me today, Jim.
Thank you, Mary Francis, very much. It's a splendid program, everyone. And those of you who are interested in this kind of spiritual training and cultivation, please search out Sacred Balance, or you can go to Ubiquity University as well, ubiquityuniversity.org, and there's a description of the program there. Why don't we start, Mary Francis, with describe, in your view, the distinction between a PhD and a doctor of ministry, because I think there's a lot of confusion between the two as to which better suited for what kind of personality and temperament. Most of our students at Ubiquity are PhDs. We also have a doctor of ministry program that you went into. Well, why did you choose the doctor of ministry as opposed to a PhD?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. Something I've been pondering a lot recently, because I've been talking to a lot of potential students and trying to work out with them which one would be the right one for them. So for me personally, the history of Ubiquity has to do with Matthew Fox, who I followed for many, many years, and then with Creation Spirituality and Wisdom University. And then when I saw Ubiquity had this Doctor of Ministry program, so before that I had 2 master's degrees, and I really didn't want to go on for higher education because I know Main Street education. I did not want anything to do with that.
Not a pretty picture.
No, not at all. And so when I was feeling into that, what I got to see is that as a professional with 40 years of experience in my fields of psychology and hospice and clinical therapy and ministry, I didn't want to go through a rote program that I would have to just check boxes and jump hoops in terms of what classes are required. I knew I wanted to construct something that would be specific to my goals and to my needs as a minister. And I wanted it to reflect, certainly reflect me as a Christian mystic and as a priest and bishop, but also to reflect the movement I would like to see in the world, and not have it be so kind of canned, like if you're going to get a degree in psychology, it has to be this particular way. So that was really a beautiful thing, the flexibility of the courses that I could take. And I took courses from the Shift Network. I took courses from Sharon Blackie, from Stan Groff, like I took a lot of courses and put them together to represent the fullness of what my life's work has been
Right.
and how to
Yeah.
substantiate that work and then get it out in a way that I think would be promoting this particular path of enlightenment and illumination. And so that to me was really the key. I turned 60 this year, and you get to a certain age and you don't really want to jump hoops anymore. You know what you want, you know how to create. So what I've been noticing with students that I'm speaking to is that there are some who are coming in with a similar kind of, I want
Sure.
this to be the magnum opus of my career and to do something that says, here I am, this is my wisdom, such as it is to date. And I think that is the felt experience of the Doctor of Ministry. I think probably Georgie would have some other descriptions, but in my feeling, the PhD is really more academic and, say, scholarly and research oriented versus impact oriented and functional oriented in the Doctor of Ministry. And I didn't want to do the research oriented piece. I obviously did some research. I did a lot of reading and put together a dissertation, and my dissertation is twofold. One is the book that is available on my website, and the other is a sacramental manual for Christian mystics, for Christian mystic ministers. So that's the functional part, is that this is a manual that they can use for all of their, if they're going to start a chapel in their home, they'll have all the material they need in order to do that. So that's the second part of my dissertation, which feels really useful to me and to the ministers that I've trained. And then the first book, the book that I wrote, is really to kind of describe to the world what is Christian mysticism in relation to the vibrational changes and conscious evolution on the planet. So I kind of got to do both of those things, which was very exciting to me. And many of the students I'm talking to are, they're kind of somewhere in between the two and trying to figure out which one feels best to them. So I describe it to them that way, and I encourage them, if they're not sure, to talk to Georgie, talk to me. I have a Doctor of Ministry, she has a PhD. It is a different animal in a felt sense. I think that both of those degrees certainly can go on to have an impact in the world, as many of the other PhD graduates have done. And they are different animals. The PhD is more well known in the world. A Doctor of Ministry is not so well known. People think that it means you're a clerical minister, you're clergy, and that's not necessarily the case. I think the word ministry and mission are somewhat synonymous. Someone who's passionate about doing the thing in the world that they came to do, and so that's why I feel like the felt difference is, this is the culmination of what I've done in the world, and here's how I want to present it to the world, based on my studies and my experience. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Yes, just to dwell on it for a moment, the way I often describe it to students is that the PhD is really about research.
Mhm,
It's an intellectual enterprise and endeavor,
mhm,
and you're seeking to develop an original contribution to human thought. You have an extensive literature review, and in that sense, it's non-denominational and specifically focused, but that the DMin, the Doctor of Ministry, is like a medical degree or a JD degree for law. It's for those who really are in the pastoral profession and want to develop a course of work and dissertation that's going to contribute to their capacity to be better pastoral guides, leaders, counselors, and so forth and so on.
yeah.
So in that sense, it's a more specific kind of a terminal degree.
Yes, I agree. And I hesitate sometimes to use the word pastoral the same, because it has a similar connotation as clergy or minister.
Yeah, there
And
may
although
be
I am
different.
I am a minister, I kind of have both of those hats. I'm a minister
Yeah,
and I want to make
yeah,
an impact on the world in this particular way. So some of the people who are applying are thought leaders, women, leaders of women, leaders in a little bit more like psychological, social movements, let's say. But I think that really, the key is it's a research versus practice, a research versus impact. And I think that's a good way to look at it. I didn't do original research in my dissertation. I gathered a large number of readings and my own experience and developed something that spoke to the message that I had about
Right,
conscious evolution on this
right.
path. So yeah, it's there are some nuances to it that are sometimes confounding to people. And the doctor of ministry doesn't have the same, let's say, social clout in the world as a PhD does in some circles. But I think that it's a worthwhile, for me, I didn't need a doctorate to continue my career, but it does help for people to say, oh, you have a doctorate degree, and then you have some authority, you're speaking with authority that people do respect. And I think that's
Mhm,
a useful endeavor for those who are drawn to that.
mhm. I don't know whether you've met her yet, but we have a woman named Yenny from Zambia,
I have met her a few times. Yes, yes.
extraordinary woman, and she already had a PhD from the California Institute for Integral Studies and has been developing a whole body of work around empowering African women in leadership.
Mm.
And that's what led her to come to Ubiquity for a doctor of ministry degree.
Yeah.
So
She was the
that's an
one I was,
example
yeah,
that if you
she's the one
have
I was
some,
referring to there
yeah,
for the
if you
women.
have
Yeah.
something that you're really wanting to focus on as opposed to pure research,
Mhm.
that's what tends to lead people into the doctor of ministry direction. So anyway, I wanted to start by just
Yeah, thank you.
clarifying
I think that's
that
important.
for our community because it's an important distinction to make, and they're all terminal degrees, so not one is not any better or worse than the other one. They're just different,
Yes.
and that's important for the different people that we have in the ecology of our society. So now let me follow up and ask uh, you to describe some of the people that are in the program. I mean, as it's developing in Sacred Balance and the DMin program, in addition to Yenny, because I want to continue to give people a sense of
Sure.
what kind of people are attracted to this program, because there may be many of you out there that have been thinking about something like that, hadn't heard of a doctor of ministry, that might find that this is the perfect thing for you to explore.
Well, I think it's really interesting the people that are interested in the doctor of ministry. For example, in my group, there are priests who have other fields of other career fields. One of them is an architect, and she is interested in the doctor of ministry to merge together the architecture of space, education, and spirit. So that's really an interesting combination. Another one is a dietitian. And so she's looking at health and spirit, so how those things come together. Another is a musician. So that's kind of transformational art, music, sound healing, voice, all of that with ministry, in bringing something into the world. And she's a recording artist as well. Those are, and then let me think the other person that I was speaking to. So I think there are four or five. One is a social worker, and one is a finance person. So it's very interesting to see the people, what they bring from their lives. Often they have degrees already, and some of them advanced degrees in their career field, but they feel impassioned and emboldened to say, I want to turn this into something that creating a more beautiful world. How do I transform my current body of knowledge and wisdom and experience into something that will then have an impact? So I think that's really interesting just from my group, that are interested in doing this doctor of ministry. And then other people like Yene that I've spoken to have other very passionate things that they want to express to the world. There is a student right now who has come back to finish her degree, and she is an iconographer. And so she's doing the iconography actually of the 7 years at Shatra, and we'll talk about that later, Jim, because it's very exciting.
Mm.
Um, and so I'm getting to see her iconographic expression of the experience of Shatra over time. And she was one of those that went to all of the 7 years. And so it's really quite a glorious thing to be offering the world, to say, this is another way of knowing. I guess that's the way I see it, another way of knowing. And then another woman is a minister from a seminary called One Spirit, and we're looking at creating a partnership with that school, that seminary. And so she's coming from a clergy perspective, minister perspective, to continue on. And there's one other person I've been speaking to lately. I think what her name is. Oh, one is a politician. So
Ooh.
that's a really interesting combination. Someone who is very active in climate change and politics, and wants to, and considers those ministries for herself, and so wants to
Yeah,
find a
yeah.
way to combine those things. So it is very interesting to see the combination of experience, education, expertise, and passion, and how people are wanting to put that together through the Doctor of Ministry program. So it's very exciting to watch and support these folks, and looking forward to see, how all of this kicks off, hopefully with a cohort in January.
Great. Well, listen, let me ask you another a couple questions. One is around the ecumenical spirit, ethos, if you will, of the program. You've identified yourself as a Christian mystic, and
Right.
much of your dissertation was on Christian mysticism, as I remember reading it. And yet, we're in a completely out of the box world where
Thank goodness.
eclecticism, there's more covens, people going to witches' covens in England than go to church now.
Yeah.
So the Druids, the Jewish Buddhists, the
Yeah.
the whatnots, the Hare
Well,
Krishnas. I mean,
you
how
know,
does the program deal with the deeply ecumenical reality of our world?
Well, my background has been very ecumenical. I studied with a Buddhist monk and Sikh yogis. I taught Kundalini yoga. I've done a lot of things over time. I just happen to have been hooked by the Christ, and so that's the one that drew me forward. And interestingly, one of our bishops, we were talking the other day, and she was calling us a coven. She said we're a coven of bishops, and I thought that was interesting. So I have always, for myself, wanted to represent Christian mysticism as one path of evolution. And as Banafsheh was talking about the Sufi, and others will speak about other ways of knowing. And I also find that the thing that led me toward spirituality in my young life was that I could see that there were parallels in all of the mystical traditions, and I wanted to know how that worked. And then what I found was, under the institutionalized religions, there's this depth of wisdom that is the same wisdom in every tradition. It's just different ways of getting to it. So, for example, on a very um, concrete level, I use rosary beads, but as a yogi, I used mala beads. I use frankincense, and another tradition might use different incense, but all the same things: the sound, the prayer, the devotion, the chanting, like all of them are in every tradition that's leading people towards their inner knowing and towards the wisdom ways. And so for me, I think of all of those as like cousins. We're all cousins, and we're all doing the same
Yeah.
thing with the same destination, but with a little bit of a different process. And mystics and gnostics are working with the energetic alchemy of the person, and the integration and transcendence of duality in each person and in the world. And so in doing that, there are different ways of getting to that same, I don't know if I want to call it a goal, but that same experience.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
are different ways of doing that. And far as I can see, Jesus has no trouble with that, and I have no trouble with that. But I do know that in the world today, and I think it is interesting that I, as a Christian mystic, am also directing the Doctor of Ministry program, and as a minister, because I try very hard to make sure that everyone who's interested knows that this is not ministry training. This is your
Mm.
individual ministry for your life, your soul. Why did you incarnate? What are you here for? What do you have to offer the world? And that is the ministry that they'll be espousing and building their impact dissertation around. And that to me is just super exciting to have that be, we're all on, different paths, but the same destination. We're kind of holding hands, supporting one another in that, and interested and excited about how those things overlap, and also how they have distinctions that are beautiful. That it's kind of like diversity in the spiritual world, how they're beautiful distinctions, and that there's not a hierarchy of how to do that. There are just a lot of ways.
Yeah. Your remarks are making me remember back to my Cambridge days, where when I was doing as it turned out, my PhD, and I was a caretaker of a meditation center called Marian Close that was run by the Epiphany philosophers, a bunch of Cambridge and Oxford dons. And my job in this meditation center, Mary Francis, was to put out the tea and the cookies, welcome people, and then clean up when they were done. And I had a little bed in the attic that served as my accommodations. And I hadn't really reflected much on ecumenical diversity before, but what I began to notice is we had Quakers would come, Bhagwan, Sri Rajneesh, dynamic meditators would come, transcendental meditation, Theravada Buddhists would come, Episcopalians would come. We had all kinds of different groups that would just flow through Marian Close week after week, month after month. And I began to notice that these different paths attracted different personalities. It wasn't so much theological differences as personality differences. The Quakers were a little quieter and, very sincere. And the guys that came in for the Bhagwan dynamic meditations, they were wild and kind of hippie-like and, in your face kind of people. So I really learned a lot about the relationship between spirituality and personality. And that was a real learning for me, because then I began to appreciate that spirituality, as you just said, it's not so much the ministry you're going to do out there, it's the ministry of your life. Why were you born? Why are you here? And how do you sculpt it and shape it and refine it so that you can be the best instrument that you possibly can be? And one size does not fit all.
Right. And at the same time, I think about the ancestry of people, because my ancestry is
yes.
Irish, Celtic, Druidic, and then I have the Eastern traditions in my practices. And so it's kind of, drawing from many different paths of truth. And so to choose one and say the rest of them are ineffective or are less than, just seems silly to me, because I've gained so much from every one of those traditions. And one of the reasons I go on pilgrimage to Ireland is to share with people that beautiful tradition of Celtic Gnosticism, let's say, or Celtic Christianity, or Druidic Celtic Christianity, the combination of those over time. So I think our ancestry, certainly personality in our ancestry, but I feel that when we do introspective practices, our heart, our being will draw us toward the way of expression that is right for us, and also right for us through which we will bring the mission to the world. Because I could have stopped at any one of those other trainings, and that would have been the route that I took, but I didn't stop, and I didn't stop because I couldn't stop. My heart was drawn towards this particular expression. And so I know that feeling. And so when I speak to potential students in Doctor of Ministry, I can feel with them what their heart is being called towards, to what their expression of their heart, the expression of their wisdom is. And that's a really beautiful process to support.
Yeah. Well, I really admire that. I'm not quite sure I've found where I'm going to land yet. I'm still inquisitive, and what I'm now immersing myself in is remote viewing.
Yeah. Well, I think it does continue, and I'm pleasantly surprised to feel in myself that does continue to unfold, and it changes, and whatever we're willing to do, and guided to do, and whatever doorways open, I think people step through the doorway and do the next right thing for them.
Yeah, exactly. So listen, as we bring this to a close, I want you to talk to us about your passion for Ireland. I know you have ancestry,
Yeah,
but you're leaving it this weekend and you're going to take a pilgrimage and you're going to stay there for several months. And
I
so talk to
am.
us about the mysticism and spirituality of Ireland.
Yeah. Well, Ireland, like many places on the planet, has a lot of history of thin places. And so thin places are locations like Shatra, locations where you can feel the energy of
Mm,
an in-between world, in between the
mm,
worlds. So I wrote a book called Dancing in the Doorway about this because that's what it feels like when you go there, especially on pilgrimage, which is a purposeful, transformative process of becoming conscious of threshold experiences, like soaking yourself in them. And so we are starting at the Black Madonna of Dublin and feeling like this group of women is all of a certain age and they're all going through a transition in their life and they're seeking the support and guidance and um, information from their own psyche, but also from the places that we'll be going to. So there's the place of the Black Madonna and the Hill of Tara, which is an ancient Celtic Druidic site where they ordained kings. And we're going to holy wells that have that same kind of otherworldly information of water and of the holiness of the water. And so those wells were Celtic wells, those wells were Druid wells, and now then they were Catholic wells, and so this kind of ecumenical, like across time, things have been transformed and have been expressed differently by different traditions, but with all the same energy. So we are going to, day after day, go to these sites to be kind of marinating in the energy of the threshold and attuning to the energy of the land, the good people, as they call the fairy folk in Ireland, to the ancient wisdom people of Ireland, the Tuatha De Danann, and they are, you know, let's say just vibrational degrees away. And so those threshold experiences open our consciousness to something greater, something like what psychedelics might do, what chanting might do, things that are put you into an ecstatic altered state or a non-ordinary state of consciousness, as Stan Grof calls it. So each of these places that we're going to has that um, the essence of that, and the women are all on board for doing this process internally and sharing with the group and continuing to do that throughout the week. And then we'll be culminating that with we're calling it a queening ceremony because it used to be that the maiden mother crone was the trajectory of the feminine. But because women are living a lot longer now, sometime between menopause and the elder wisdom years, there's this queen period that is about what is the mission that each woman is going to do and what are they doing now
brilliant.
that their children are raised and grown and what's the next thing they have to offer the world. And so this whole process is kind of closing the last chapter, opening the new one, being crowned the queen of whatever it is they find is the thing that is their queendom. And then finally we'll be going to the Marian apparition site in Knock, which is of course a pilgrimage site for the Catholics that has to do with Mother Mary showing up in the sky there and blessing the people, and is a
Brilliant.
quite a draw, and so much energy around the feminine, so much energy around transformation and transcendence and unfolding and tuning into what it is that each of these women came to do now in their lives. Not that they haven't done things already, but now in this period of their lives.
Mhm. Great. Speaking of the thinning, I love that term, that like on October 31st, November 1st and 2nd, the veils of the worlds are particularly thin.
Right, right. That's a
Someone
thin time, right? Yes.
sent me a link saying that the Chinese have developed a super radar.
Mm.
And what they've detected is this big plasma bubble above the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Ah,
Can you imagine?
yes, I can.
Yes, you
I can.
can.
As a matter of fact, I don't really have
As a
to
matter
imagine.
of fact.
Yeah. So the other time that I'm spending in Ireland is I'm going to be writing another book, and that is about the mystical experiences that I've had personally that have to do with those thin times and thin places and relating to beings in other dimensions and relating to beings in other places. And so that part of it is my next thing to offer is to say that we're going to be having, as you're doing with the UAPs, like we're going to be having more and more contact with other dimensions as this
Exactly.
dimension rises in vibration, and we need to prepare ourselves and not be surprised or spooked by that, but to know that that's the normal progression of the evolution of consciousness, is that our bandwidth of vibration will expand, and so we'll have experiences more and more regularly with angels and saints and deceased people and what we might call extraterrestrials, or whatever you want to call them, people in other vibrations, just like the Tuatha De Danann, another vibration, or the fairies or the elementals, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, so preparing ourselves, I think it's the time to prepare ourselves for this kind of change, and
Exactly.
yeah, for
Exactly.
ourselves and for the world to not be afraid of that.
Yeah, exactly. Well put. Beautifully put.
Yeah.
Mary Francis Drake, everyone, the director of our Doctor of Ministry program and the director of Sacred Balance. It's for those of you who really want to dive into your own spiritual destiny and really develop your own ministry in a deeper way. Check out Sacred Balance, or check out the Doctor of Ministry program at Ubiquity University, and we can set up a call with Mary Francis or myself and invite you in. It's a wonderful program. And I would just say, as we close, that one of the joys I experience day by day at Ubiquity University is the caliber of the people that I have the privilege of working with, like Mary Francis. It's really a wonderful team that we have of really dedicated people to the true meaning of learning in our time. So, Mary Francis, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
You can join Mary Francis in the after chat. You'll see the link in the chat box. Stan just put it in. You received it in your Zoom reminders. And then tomorrow, we're going to explore another one of the partnerships that Ubiquity University is developing for your edification. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mary Francis. We'll be in touch. And good luck in Ireland.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.